Hey, what's good, guys? I'm here to give you guys a guide to the early game of Pokemon Radical Red. Now, this is actually a very difficult ROM hack, so if it's your first hardcore Nuzlocke, I do not recommend playing this, as there are pretty strict level caps that you can't exceed if you want to edit the rule set. So, anyways, I'm gonna be going over some tips to get through the early game up to Surge pretty easily. So, the number one tip I can, well, not the number one tip, but the first tip I'm going to give is that whenever you're going on a route to get an encounter, before you even think about stepping in the grass, go to the documentation, find the latest versions, Pokemon locations, and then look at the difference between the encounters at nighttime and daytime, and then adjust your system time accordingly so that you get the best chance of getting a good encounter. For example, in versions previous to the Corviknight buff, Rookity was available west of Viridian City. I will fly there right now. So if you go to Viridian City, this route right here, Route 22, there was, well, there still is, but there was Rookity in this grass, and Corviknight was insanely game breaking. So it was so beneficial to change your system time to nighttime before getting that encounter. And then moving on, uh, we have, so early game, the starter I recommend choosing the most is this guy right here, Wartortle. So this is mostly for the game overall than anything specific. But Blastoise is incredible in so many situations. To start, to start us off, Squirtle is the most consistent starter choice for the first gym because the Brock has a Vulpix, which evidently has a good matchup against Bulbasaur. And it can be noted that Squirtle does not just solo Brock because he has an Alolan Geodude with Spark that completely blows up Squirtle. So you cannot just solo it with Squirtle, but it makes that first gym significantly easier. So that's the first reason why. And then number two, actually, so in the early game, Brock, in the like rest of the early game, Wartortle, like you could see, it was a Wartortle, and everything I have right now is like level 38. So Wartortle is really useful for that first segment through about when you get your Gyarados, and and that is because Wartortle isn't as useful after that because you have access to other water types that are generally better for that portion of the game. Like you get Chinchou for Misty and Surge. You get a Seeking, which I will explain later why it's so good. You get a Gyarados, which is a Gyarados, and like all this stuff. But then in the mid game, a lot of having a pure water typing is really useful for a lot of specific attackers. Like for example, the rivals Darmanitan has Earthquake and I think it has Rock Slide. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it has Rock Slide. And that obviously means you can't use things like Gyarados or Lantern to check it. And Blastoise is pretty naturally bulky, so it functions as a good check for it, and that's really significant in its viability. And then once you get access to Megastones, and I believe after you beat Koga, you get access to Shell Smash at level 68, and Shell Smash Mega Blastoise is a huge threat. Can just sweep through certain fights. So Blastoise is the best starter to choose. I won't say it's like 100% the only choice because Skrelp himself won because he chose not because, but in his winning attempt, he chose Mega Charizard or well Charmander, and it did get it. And the thing about Charmander is it's the only starter where you have to reset if you don't get the right encounters, generally. But in score, Charmander is really strong in the mid game because like right after you get Mega Stones, you get Mega Charizard X, which is fantastic. Then after you beat Blaine, you get Charizardite Y, And that set is Charizard Mega Charizard Y is really good for the Elite Four, particularly Lorelei. And then moving on, so those two things are out of the way. So with regards to your team building against Brock, you have Route 1. I recommend doing Route 1 at nighttime. I'm at nighttime right now, and you can see Panpour is all times of day, but at nighttime you get access to Seedot, which evolves into Nuzleaf before the gym and has access to Razorleaf to give you a solid answer to Geodude. You also have many more types that are neutral against rock. So you have like Zigzagoon, Poochyena, Alolan Rattata. All of those are dark types, so they can at least hit Alolan Geodude for neutral damage, which means you can chip it down and probably beat it without having to get damage on Squirtle so that it can deal with the last two. And also, in a similar vein, make sure you equip items before battles, because it's very important to have like all your orange berries and such. And while we're on the topic of items, once you get to Mount Moon, you get access to perhaps the most valuable TM in the entire game, which is Thief. And the reason why it's so valuable is because Supercell, who is the creator of this ROM hack, really beefed up the items found on wild Pokemon. In the description, I've included the 2 documents that I have personally worked on for this, in conjunction with Help the Skrelps Discord. I'll leave him in the description as well. But all the held items have really good items. So, for example, Route 22. Let's look at the Dex Nav. Well, there's a lot of stuff missing, so let's... Okay, so anyways, Wooloo doesn't have any items. Let's start number 1. Spearow, it holds a Sharp Beak, which is really important for pretty much any flying type to increase its damage output and get key KOs. And then Panseer, he can give you a Pachysol berry, which is incredibly important for, damage resist berries are especially important in this ROM hack because the AI actively plays around them. So you ensure you're not going to get hit by that coverage move unless it's with the damage reduction, it is the most damage for your opponent. And then also, it's not pictured here, but Starly appears on this route and it can give you Yachi berries, which are incredibly important for certain fights where key mons have ice coverage and you need something to check them pretty well. And then even going down here, Route 1, Panpour holds Wackenberry, which is pretty important for some early stuff. And then moving on, another very important thing to do is raid farming. You're going to be sitting in front of these dens a heck of a lot. So what raids are is like, you talk to a den and then you get there's a table of possible mons you can find in these dens at every single time, right? And so you get a partner and you do like a Dynamax battle. And like regardless of how you do your encounter rules for raids, these are very important not for the actual mons you fight, but the rewards you get afterwards. So as an example, here you get Quick Balls, I think something else, Ultra Ball, Stardust, Yellow Shard, Star Piece, and I think there's one other item I got there. I got a Max Ether, I think. Could be wrong. And you can get stuff like Lucky Eggs, Moonstones, Ability Capsules, and Ability Pills, sorry, and other stuff. So grinding raids is really important for items. This is particularly true with a specific raid when we get to the next route. And now I'm going to give my encounter guide. So this is assuming that you don't count your starter for Pallet Town, which I know Yon does, so many people will count it. So right here, the pool right here, you have to wait until you have your good rod. And then once you have your good rod, you should fish here because your old rod encounters are pretty much, the same you'd expect. You got a Magikarp and then like one other random flavor thing. But your good rod encounters are really good. So you have number one, you have Quillfish, which that's the worst of the bunch. Which Quillfish is like a bulky pivot, intimidate. Like it's not too terrible, right? And then number two is one of the really good ones. It's Carvana. So the reason why Carvana is good is because Sharpedo solos the first Morty fight in conjunction with a no, the fight against Morty in conjunction with a Steel type. And that's incredibly important. Okay, and then there's one other encounter on that route. I'm just double checking really quickly to make sure I don't get it wrong. Okay. And then your third encounter there on Old Route is Barboach. And you have a 60% chance at it, and it's just like it's basically budget Swampert, like solid water ground type pivot, it's pretty solid. And like it can fulfill a few roles for you. And then Veridian City. Similarly, you should wait until you have a good rod because you have a 20% chance at Galarian Corsola, which is an incredible tank and a wall that can stomp certain segments of the end game. I know this is supposed to be an early game guide, but it's just like also a guide on how to treat your encounters in the early game. And then in Pewter City, a big thing is you talk to this man right here, and he prompts you to pay him $5,000 for an egg. And this is absolutely worth it because the egg gives you a random mon from like a really large table. I don't have access to the table, but there's tons of really cool stuff like Drowsy, which turns into Psychic Surge Hypno. And then you can get like Skidoo, Bulbasaur, and like plenty of good stuff. Obviously, there's some stuff that's not as good. But it's still not bad. Another good one is Nose Pass because it means you have a free Faulkner fight. And then moving on, we have Route 3. There's really no reason to delay this. I'm also not gonna include a guide to like which Dynamax dens to include because a lot of people do different things. Route 4, a lot of people are tempted into taking this old man's Magikarp and just skipping the other end of Route 4, but I'm telling you, this is not worth it. And then in Mount Moon, you should get an encounter on the main floor because there's just some really good stuff here. All the fighting types make for a way easier fight at the end of Mount Moon because at the end of Mount Moon, I'll go exactly to where it is really quickly. Okay, so right as you come down to like these steps, you get jumped by Archer, who has a Mightyena with max attack and max speed EVs. So having a fighting type like Gerda or Hariyama really helps against that. But it's probably better to fight to get the encounter at nighttime when you can get Machop, because there's Mega Machamp, which could be potentially good in the end game. But I personally do prefer Conkeldurr, but I can understand the desire to get a Machamp. And then Route 4. Okay, so this guy right here, really important. He gives you the Macho Brace, which is important because there is one thing you have to EV train in order for a certain gym battle. And then moving on, this Route 4's grass is really good. You have well, actually you want to do this during the daytime, so let me change my system time really quickly. But you want to do this during the daytime because the encounters are really good. Okay. So during the daytime, you have access to Fanfi and Skidoo are really good. Lux, the Luxray line is pretty good because it's buffed to have like dark typing. Skidoo is really good because of Grass Pelt, and if you can get a grassy terrain setter with it, it can solo entire fights. Chuck being a notable one, it does really well against Giovanni as well. And obviously Donphan is a solid thing. Flordress isn't bad, like really good encounters. You don't want to skip this for the Gyarados vendor. Alright, moving on. We have Cerulean City. There's another egg person here, this egg lady. Now, Cerulean City is really interesting with regards to encounters, because if you count eggs in the area they're hatched, you actually should box the egg. Well, like, so the issue is that once you beat, what's her face? Misty, in her rematch, she gives you a Snivy, or not a Snivy, a Protean Froakie. So, if you are counting like only a one encounter for area like hard, and you're not making an exception for eggs or anything, then you should not take the egg in this, because Protean Greninja is absolutely fantastic. And obviously, if you're like in a position where you need an egg hatch to save your run, go for it. But if not, then it's definitely your best choice to do that. And moving on is a really important segment, Route 24. This you can get at any time. I think daytime's a little bit better here, but it doesn't really matter. So now Route 25, number one thing, do not get an encounter in the grass up there. It is not worth it. So you should delay that for once you get to Bill's house, you talk to him, do the teleporter thing, and then you go all the way down here, and then this guard moves to the side, and you can go all the way down to Vermilion City. And in Vermilion City, you talk to a man with a fishing rod, and up there you can get a Chinchu. Route 5 has some good encounters. I recommend going for nighttime because of how good Alolan Muck is. And then, actually, I don't think I have the T yet. Yeah, okay. So we can go down to Ridian City, because this is another really important segment. Okay, so Lantern is very good against Misty and can provide help against Surge, though you usually do not need it. And then this egg vendor, if you count eggs separately, you should take either the Celadon vendor or this guy's egg, and then hatch it in the underground, because it says like met at underground. So you can pick one of those two if you want, because the in city encounters are absolutely necessary. And then you talk to this guy right here next to the Pokemon Center. He gives you the Old Rod. And then first, you go down to over here. And like once this guy lets you past for the SSN, in that area where it says SSN in the like save and location menu, you fish on the side and you have a 100% Magikarp rate. And then once you do that, you go back into Vermilion City and you fish with the Old Rod here, right? And you need to catch a Goldie, that right here. And that's especially important for Surge. I will explain why momentarily, but now armed with your new encounters, you should have Gyarados, Lantern, and Wartortle. With those three and like any like marginally like good pivots and such, dark types are good for Starmie. And like make sure you pack up on your resist berries, like get a Chardy berry for Gyarados from a raid, and like all the stuff, and like some citrus or orange berries to like heal HP when your stuff gets chipped down. And you should be able to have a pretty free Misty fight as long as you don't choke. And then with Lieutenant Surge, that's when you make use of the Goldeen encounter, because what you do against Surge is that you take that Goldeen and you evolve it into a Seeking. It evolves at level 33, and then you go into no, not Saffron. You go to Cerulean City. You go to this house right here. You talk to this guy, and he teaches your Seeking the move Fishness Rend. And for those of you that don't know, if you move first, the power is double, so it's 190 base power. And then, as it levels up, you teach it Agility and Aqua Ring. And also some notable, and you go to Diglett's cave and pick up the rest TM in the ground. Then you teach it these 4 moves. You max out its attack EVs by EV training with the Macho Brace or grinding one of the raids. So this Route 4, this raid right here gives out muscle wings and protein. So if you don't mind changing your system time a bunch of times to just grind wings here, then then you should just do that, and then you should get a max attack EVs on Seeking pretty easily. And then last but not least, you need to go back to Vermilion City, fish some, and and thief Mystic Water off of Wild Goldine, so that you can equip it to your Seeking. So that, with the exception of really low IV values, like it has to be like an E or in attack to not get the guaranteed kill, but you get a guaranteed kill on the lead Pincurchin, get a guaranteed kill on the Vikavolt, you get a guaranteed kill on the Raichu, and then you 2-hit KO the Manectric, and it does not OHKO you in response because Seeking is found with the ability Lightning Rod. Make sure that once you evolve, if you have Water Veil, grind raids until you get an ability pill, and then feed it to Seeking to change it to Lightning Rod. And that fight is a complete sweep. You just agility 3 times on the Pincurchin, and then spam, and then rest once electric terrain runs out, and Aqua Ring before resting, so that you get passive recovery, because Aqua Ring healing is very important to ensure that you're out of crit range of Manectric's Hyper Voice with max HP investment, which you generally will get to or near grinding on Wild Audinose. And then rest, and once you wake up, you can just Fishness Rend through the rest of the team. And that's generally all you need to know for the early game encounters and gym fights. And now moving on, I'm going to be going over the locations of all of the rival battles. So first off, Route 22. You got your standard rival battle here. He has like a Starly in his starter. Pretty easy fight. Then we're gonna fly over to Pewter City, and right near the bottom, somewhere in the grass down here, you get jumped by Brendan, the protagonist of Emerald. And what you have to do is fight him. He leads off with a Corphish and has a Trico in the back. So you want to pretty much anything, you can even use your Squirtle or something, but any bird or something should be able to take out Trico. This fight's pretty easy as well. Those two are not problematic rival fights at all. Then, you continue on as normal. Cerulean City, you have the normal rival fight. He leads off with a Curlia, has some, and has some other mons, he has a starter. I think he has a Rockruff and some others, and a couple of other things. Not too bad. And then this one is actually one that is a huge run ender. Not necessarily because it's super hard to prep for or beat, but because people get caught by it unexpectedly. But once you go into Route 11, one second. So this is the sign for Route, right here. You jump out, and then right by Diglett's cave, Brendan jumps you. He leads off with a Hyper Voice Loudred, has a Calm Mind Lunatone, his starter, then he has one other thing, and it's a really hard fight if you're under leveled, just because he has such strong mons. So you definitely need to prepare for that as well. And you actually have to fight this fight before Surge, because he jumps you before Diglett's cave, and you need to get the Restium from in there for the Surge battle. Because otherwise, one, you risk a burn from Pincurchin with Scald, and number two, even if it doesn't burn, you take too much chip damage and can fuck around and lose to Manectric. And then this, I know I said I'm not going to go over every individual item, but here you can encounter, what's it called? sandy gas during the daytime, and thief bottle caps off of them, which are very important for swapping in between your hidden abilities and regular abilities. And this is particularly important for one of the things we mentioned earlier, Lantern. Later in the early game, its Volt Absorb is really nice for Lieutenant Surge as a backup in case something somehow goes wrong with Seeking, like it has a bad attack IV, or you forget a Mystic Water or something, right? But once you get to the late game, it's really good in a ton of fights. Uh, Between like rival, like choiced Crawdaunt on Brendan's rival teams, and like the Misty rematch, and this one trainer who has like a choice band, Fishness, Ren, Swift Swim, Seeking, and stuff. So those are important. And then otherwise, on the SS Anne, really all you need to do is on the SSN, the rival fight against your main rival was removed in favor of this Brendan fight. So you don't have to worry about that. Really, all you need to do is grab the Brick Break TM, some items, talk to the captain, rub his back, get cut, and get out. Grinding this game is ridiculously easy, and that will be my next topic actually, because that's why you don't need the trainer XP. So in the early game, so this game has a feature called Dex Nav, and what it does is you can go over, see everything the route you've encountered before, and you can pick out something. You can hotkey it with whatever your R key is, and then just hit R, your R key in the main menu to encounter it at any time. And obviously you can click A on them to do it for one in particular, and then there's a piece of shaking grass, and it's what you find, right? So you can do this to basically, number one, look for things to thief, and number two, look for things to train against. So in the early game, you don't have access to auto grinding, so you have to dex nav like high experience things. In this route, Wooloo's pretty good for training, and in Veridian Forest, Pikachu gives the highest EXP yield in the forest. And the important thing to note is when Dexnav grinding, Dexnav can bring up a wild Pokemon up to level 15 prior to Brock. So if you're not ready for an Electro Ball Pikachu, then do not Dexnav grind in Veridian Forest and just go for the Wooloos, because you can run from them if they're too high level, and they're easier to KO. Pikachu does give slightly more, so if you have like an Oddish or something, it's better to grind there. But I just wanted to heed that word of advice. Anytime you dex nav in this game, be 100% prepared for something like 10 levels above the average wild mon level to fight you, and ensure you are 100% sure you can do that without losing anything. Okay? Like, I know some people who have literally wiped 2 level 15 wild Pikachu in this forest while dex nav grinding, so you need to be careful. And if you do choose Bulbasaur as your starter, that's not as much of a concern actually. So that is one. I don't think Squirtle is like objectively like 100% correct. Like you can still win with the other two, like 100%. I just think Squirtle gives you the most consistent early and mid game, and it picks up again in the late game once you get access to Shell Smash Mega. And like Charizard is like in the mid-late game, Charizard is easily the best with like Mega Charizard X, and like Mega Venusaur is a tank. And I haven't actually used Venusaur, so I don't have too much experience with how good it is. So I will let you guys know about that. And then otherwise, the best grinding spot in the early game, you don't get access to until you get to Cerulean City. And keep in mind, you cannot use this until you have fished for Chinchu on Route 25. And right here, this patch of grass, you can dex nav wild Autonos. And they're all level 16, some 26. Keep in mind my dex nav guidelines. And you grind on them for insane EXP yield as well as HP EVs at the same time, which is really important. And Getting HP EVs on things you don't think need them is not a big deal because you can reset EVs very easily later on once you get to Saffron City. And you generally do not need to EV train before Saffron outside of that one Seeking fight. Oh, and also, I should probably mention where you EV train it if you're choosing not to do the Muscle Wing strategy. In Mount Moon, you can see on DexNav there are Rockruffs, Timbers, and Makuhitas, and Tyrogues. All four of the, not Makuhitas, sorry, Rockruff, Machop, Tyrogue, and Timber. Those four all give you one attack EV each, and then with Macho Brace, you get 4. And so the math there means you have to kill 63 of those one attack EV mons to get all the way to 252. So now I hope you guys found this video informative and helpful for your early game in Radical Red. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Discord. My name is Moneth pretty much everywhere, so it shouldn't be too hard to find me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a nice day.